Hey everyone, and welcome. The movie we're going to be talking about today is The Eternals. Fun fact, the characters Sprite, Makari, and Ajax are played by females in this film, but their comic book counterparts are actually male. This movie came out in 2021 and stars Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, and Selma Hayek, and was directed by Chloe Zhao. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Eternals tells the story of a family of 10 Eternals who come to Earth to help stop the Deviants. Over time, they think that they have destroyed all of the Deviants and then they decide to go their separate ways. They find out that these Deviants actually aren't destroyed and are getting stronger. So now they must band together to destroy the Deviants once and for all. The cast of The Eternals is just phenomenal. You have Gemma Chan, who was in Crazy Rich Asians. Richard Madden was in The Bodyguard. Kit Harington was in Game of Thrones. Angelina Jolie was in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Selma Hayek was in Frida. Kumail Nanjiani was in The Big Sick. Brian Tyree Henry was in Godzilla vs. Kong. Barry Keoghan was in The Green Knight. Lauren Ridloff was in The Walking Dead. Don Lee was in Train to Busan. Bill Skarsgård was in It. And Chloe Zhao also directed Nomadland. The Eternals is a superhero movie with family drama at the center of it. If you liked X-Men, the Fantastic Four, or the Justice League series, then I suggest that you give this movie a go. When watching The Eternals, I loved how beautiful the locations were. I read that Chloe Zhao decided to use more on location shots instead of using a studio to film a lot of the scenes, which I think paid off because the movie itself was beautiful. Subscribe to my channel, you won't regret it. I was wondering how the lighting would be with these more on location sets because it's something that you really have no control of. But I thought they did a great job with the lighting in this movie to make sure that the viewer can see everything clearly. But not only that it's clear, but it was nice and crisp and really showed off all the different aspects of this movie. The Eternals is a family of 10 members who all have different abilities. In the film, we see how they have been around for a long period of time, fighting off these deviants and helping the human race, and eventually they all go their separate ways. In this movie, Cersei is the main focus of the film, but all the other members of the Eternals also get their time to shine. I feel like Ajax was the heart of this movie. Selma Hayek steps into this role of a leader who has a difficult task ahead of her, and I think she does her role as a leader with so much kindness, and you really like her taking the lead of this team. When I was watching the press for this movie, I really loved Selma Hayek's energy because it seemed like she was just very excited to be in this role because she never thought that at her age and as a female who is Hispanic, that she would be in this role of a superhero who is super badass. And so I just loved her energy going into the role. And I thought she did a great job with the character and making us feel this deeper connection with Ajax. Angelina Jolie was so badass as the warrior Athena. Angelina Jolie really gets into her roles, and I thought she really embodied this character who not only was this fierce warrior, but was also having a mental break due to all of the years of memories that were stressing, her brain. I was really interested to see what her character would bring to the Eternals, and I loved how much of a badass she was, and you definitely did not want to be on the other side of her weapons. For the role of Makari, I'm so glad that they got Lauren Ridloff to play her, and I thought that it was great that this character is a deaf superhero. I feel like that representation is great to see on screen, and I thought that it showed that you can do anything no matter who you are, and I thought that she was such a badass. I love the way that they showed her speed on screen, and they showed her running fast compared to other times that they have shown speedsters in movies where they show the world around them slowing down. So I thought that they did a great job with that. It was interesting to see how her speed was not only used in a defensive mechanism. She can use her speed to, save people and to run away, of course, but they also showed how that speed can be weaponized. And I thought that was great to see how these powers were so useful. Barry Keoghan's Droog was probably the character that surprised me the most because I honestly thought he was going to betray the team. But in reality, it just seems like he was the type of family member who pretends that they don't care about the family, but they actually do. It was interesting to see his character kind of be the first one to leave the family because he did not like the way that things were going when they were, trying to not interfere with the humans when they had the ability to help them. I loved his character and I loved what Barry brought to the role, and I really hope that we get to see him again because it was definitely one of my favorite characters in this film. Icarus being the bad guy kind of caught me off guard in this film. In the beginning of the film, I really just thought that he really wanted to be the protector of his family and watch out for them and make sure that none of them were hurt. Once I figured out he is the reason why Ajax was dead, I was rooting for his despise for the rest of the movie. Phastos was a member of the Eternals I was really interested in learning about because I really wanted to know what was the extent of his technological powers. In the beginning of this film, Brian Tyree Henry portrays him as this person who is very nerdy and really just wants to progress humans in the form of technology. While, we learn that they may not be ready to progress that far, he really has plans on how they can improve as a society. I love how throughout the film we come to find out that yes, he is a nerdy person and technology is his main forte, but we come to find out that in a battle, he is actually really useful and creates all these cool little gadgets. And when they're battling Icarus, he is the one that creates gadgets that is able to hold Icarus down. So I love how his powers are just like multifaceted and definitely are powers that you definitely would use in a battle, but also use to help progress the world. There was a diverse group of actors in this film, and I really love that films in general, especially the MCU films, are moving in this direction to have more of a diverse cast. We have a multiracial gay couple in this film. We have a deaf superhero. We have different actors portraying characters from different ethnic backgrounds in this movie. We also have a movie that is directed by a female director who is also a woman of color and also led by a woman of color. I thought it was great how we got to see all of these different forms of diversity throughout this film. When I was looking at the critics' reviews of some of these movies, I felt like their reviews were kind of targeted because this movie is a very diverse movie, and I felt like they were rating the movie because there were some of the topics that didn't apply to them, but they didn't realize watching this movie that just because it doesn't apply to you doesn't mean that it's not going to apply to someone else. And I think that's part of the reason why they rated this movie so poorly, even though the movie itself is not a poor movie. It is a great movie, and there is diversity on screen, and it does a really good job of representing people and cultures throughout different aspects of life. If there's one thing I'm going to love in a movie, it's when they incorporate historical events into their timeline. I love how this movie not only incorporated these historical events into their timeline, but also showed how in these historical events, the world wasn't just filled with white people. There was a very diverse group of people throughout history, and this movie showed that, the Eternals were helping them, but I love more importantly how it showed that even in these smaller roles, that, the world has been diverse and has not only just been white people. And I think it's great to see that on screen and it's great to show that throughout history, there, has been a very diversified group of people. This movie enacts a nonlinear storytelling method, and I think for some people that can be a little confusing, but I think Chloe Zhao does a great job of showing this story and showing how much the Eternals have been around throughout history and showing how has it affected them in the modern day. It was interesting to see how many of the characters had grown throughout time and how some of the characters pretty much remained the same throughout time. When focusing on a team, it's always interesting to see how they're going to juggle all the characters that they have. When I was watching this film, I saw the team kind of in two subgroups in the beginning of the movie. There were the warriors, and then you had the people who weren't warriors and more of like pacifists, I would say. Throughout the film, we come to find out that these lines kind of get blurred because you come to find out that the people who you didn't think were warriors in the beginning of the film actually can use their powers in ways that can make them very dangerous. I really like the design of the outfits in this film, as well as the design that they chose for the Celestials. The outfits in this film really show that they are all part of the same team, but also are specialized for each member of the team. And I love that there were subtle differences in their outfits. When you're watching the movie, there are certain scenes that kind of reminded me of like being in like a planetarium when you're looking at space. And I just thought it was cool how some of these effects when they're going into space, or even some of the designs on their outfits or their ships, are shown because it really shows you how beautiful and universal this movie looks. I do think that this movie had some flaws. I think that the pacing of this film was a little slow. And I think one thing that I've noticed with most superhero movies is that they kill off the villain in this first movie that the villain is introduced. And I think that that would be a challenge for them is to not kill off the villain in the movie that they're introduced. I think Icarus is, a great villain for this film, and I would have loved to see him come back in a different aspect, and or at least face the consequences of his actions. The two end credit scenes of this movie really had me hyped. In the first like mid credit scene, we get to see Thanos' brother Eros, who is played by Harry Styles. And as a Harry Styles fan, I was very excited to see him playing a MCU character. In the second end credit scene, we see Dane, who didn't really have much of a storyline in this movie, find this sword that was from his ancestors, which we know that he will soon become the Black Knight, but we hear this voice asking him a question. It was really interesting in this scene, and I was wondering who the voice was, and I come to find out that that voice is actually Mahershala Ali's Blade. So I'm really interested to see how those two characters will connect in the future. And I'm wondering if, a future Eternal will come up in either the Blade movie or will Blade be in another Eternal movie. So I'm really interested to see kind of what the future lies for Marvel. And I really hope that we get to see Harry Styles return as Eros. And I really want to see more of Dane's story in a future movie. My favorite scene in this film is at the end of the film, where some of the Eternals are trying to stop this Celestial from being born and destroying Earth, when Icarus and Sprite are actually trying to ensure that this does happen. It was an interesting scene because we see Fastos come in and he completely inhibits Icarus and making sure that he stops from attacking the other Eternals and stopping them from what they need to do. In this scene, there's also a deviant crow who comes and is trying to take their powers as well. And he really targets Thena, but it is proven that Thena is a great warrior when he takes her, and you think that it's the end for Thena, but she comes out and slices and dices him up, and she is. Very successful in making sure that he is killed and she avenges Gilgamesh's death. It was a really interesting scene because it's a scene in which you realize that these people like Drew and Cersei, and even Sprite are some of the Eternals who we may have doubted in the beginning, but you come to realize in this scene you do not doubt them because they definitely can handle their own. It was a really cool scene, and I was really happy that we got to see them all in a battle together and everyone just fighting and just handling their own. It was a great scene at the end. The Eternals is a great movie filled with laughter and great action scenes. Chloe Zhao delivers a movie unlike we have seen in the MCU, and it's definitely a gorgeous movie to see on screens if you can. If you have not seen The Eternals, I highly suggest that you go and see it. It is a great movie. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you have not subscribed, please do so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.